So imagine it's tomorrow morning.
Okay.
It's 8:00 a.m., right? Your company's board of directors calls you into a conference room, and they slide this blank piece of paper across the table.
That is never a good start to a morning.
Right. Never. And they look at you and ask for a completely exhaustive list of every single AI system that touches your hiring, your lending, maybe your healthcare routing or public services.
Well, wow.
And they want it in 24 hours. Could you actually produce that?
I mean, honestly, no.
Mm-hmm.
For the vast majority of organizations right now, the answer to that question is just a very terrified silence.
Sweating bullets, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's the ultimate reality check for modern leadership. We like to think of business problems like engineering problems, right?
Yeah.
If you break your arm, you go to the hospital, they take an x-ray, and there's this very clear, jagged white line.
Right. The doctor just points at it and says, there's the fracture.
Yes. It's binary. It's super clean. You know exactly what is broken and, well, what the protocol is to fix it.
We love that visibility in corporate risk. We love putting our risks into neat little spreadsheet categories.
Oh, absolutely. But when you step into the world of artificial intelligence inside a modern enterprise today, that X-ray machine is just fundamentally broken.
It's totally murky.
It's incredibly murky. We're dealing with a technological landscape where you have models buried inside marketing software or like algorithms making quiet decisions in the HR department or code libraries written by developers who literally left the company 3 years ago.
It's just this invisible web.
An invisible web. And the core problem today is that global regulators, they are no longer accepting muddy waters as an excuse.
They want the X-rays.
They're standing at the door demanding the X-rays. They want to see the jagged lines, and they want to know what you are doing to fix them mechanically.
Which brings us perfectly to the context of this deep dive today. I want everyone listening to just take a hard look at the calendar, because today is April 25, 2026.
Right in the middle of Q2.
Exactly. We are squarely in Q2 2026. And if you've been following the regulatory drumbeat over the last, couple of years, this isn't just a random spring day.
Not at all.
This quarter has been universally flagged by, legal analysts, compliance platforms, strategic advisories, everyone. It's the absolute moment of reckoning.
Yeah. Q2 2026 is the wall. It's the moment when all those abstract sort of philosophical promises about responsible AI.
Right, the nice sounding stuff.
Exactly, the stuff that sounds great in a keynote. That all suddenly crashes into the concrete reality of legal liability.
So our mission today is to shift the conversation entirely away from theory.
Please.
We're not doing flashy AI strategy decks today.
No, because those decks look fantastic on a massive screen at a tech conference, but they do absolutely nothing to protect you in a court of law.
Right. And we're dishing those hollow, nicely formatted policy PDFs that just sit on an internet portal that literally nobody reads.
Yeah, nobody's ever read those.
Right, because we aren't here to just admire the problem. We want to give you a lifeboat.
An operational playbook.
Exactly. We're going to get super granular. We'll walk through how to run an urgent 48-hour AI system census across your entire enterprise.
Which is so critical right now.
We're going to map out the hidden accountability gaps that your leadership doesn't even know exist yet. And, crucially, we'll talk about how to hardwire AI controls right into your procurement and vendor management before the hard deadline hits in August 2026.
We're talking about building a permanent system of record.
Yes, system of record. Let's unpack that, because I feel like that phrase is the hinge point for this whole crisis.
It really is. There is this massive glaring disconnect right now between a company saying, we use AI, and a company actually governing AI.
Oh, completely. You walk into any Fortune 500 company today, and they will proudly tell you how AI-driven they are.
Oh, they'll shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
But if you ask the follow-up question, like, okay, how exactly is that AI governed?
The room just goes completely quiet.
Dead quiet.
Yeah.
Because most organizations still treat AI compliance like a policy exercise. They write a 50-page memo.
They make a little ethical review checklist.
Right. Or maybe they fill out a model card if the data science team is, feeling particularly disciplined that week.
Which is just fundamentally misdiagnosing the problem. Treating high-risk AI as a policy exercise is it's like trying to stop a leak in a hydroelectric dam with a strongly worded Post-it note.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Yeah.
Because high-risk AI is not a policy problem. It's an engineering problem and a system of record problem.
Right. Let's ground that concept for a second.
Hmm.
Think about how a mature enterprise handles its money, its finances. You don't just have a financial strategy PDF and then cross your fingers hoping everyone spends money wisely.
That would be disaster.
You'd go bankrupt. You have a general ledger, you have rigorous procurement software like SAP or Oracle,
Right.
a central system of record where every single dollar in and out is tracked, classified, owned, and audited. Every transaction has a timestamp, an authorization code, and a named human who is accountable for it.
And that is exactly what a regulated system requires. It optimizes for traceability, ownership, and hard evidence.
But I mean, AI hasn't been built or deployed like a general ledger, has it?
Not even close.
Mm.
Over the last 3 or 4 years, AI adoption didn't happen through centralized, rigorous IT governance. It happened organically,
Very chaotically.
incredibly chaotically.
Yeah.
It was driven by product teams, rogue business units, and external SaaS vendors. And they were all optimizing for one single metric, which was speed.
Speed, feature parity, keeping up with competitors. They treated it as an innovation initiative.
Exactly. And an innovation initiative optimizes for, getting things out the door just to see if they work.
Right. Break things fast.
Yeah. But a regulated system program optimizes for safety, traceability, escalation paths, and legal accountability. Those two worlds are colliding right now.
And they're colliding because the fundamental architecture of how companies buy technology has completely changed. Let's talk about that architectural shift, because this is where the exposure gets really dangerous for companies. The most legally precarious AI system in your company today is probably not that flagship multi-million-dollar large language model that your CEO launched with a press release.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
That flagship model actually got scrutinized.
The general counsel looked at it?
Right. The chief risk officer looked at it. It had a dedicated budget. It was highly visible.
The dangerous system is the one nobody remembered to log.
Shadow AI.
Yes, it's the resume screening vendor tool that some regional HR manager bought on a corporate credit card because they wanted to speed up seasonal hiring.
Yeah. Or the automated loan scoring feature that quietly got turned on during a routine software update for the bank's CRM.
Or that little experimental pilot program from 2024 that never officially passed a security review but somehow quietly became the business as usual backbone for customer service.
Shadow AI is absolutely pervasive.
But, let me push back a little here, just on behalf of IT professionals. Keeping track of software is quite literally the IT department's job.
Sure.
We have CIOs. We spend millions on software asset management tools, these ITAM platforms that scan networks to see exactly what's running. Why is AI specifically evading these massive tracking systems?
Well,
It sounds like we've been treating AI like a new coffee machine in the break room. Anyone can just plug one in, when we should be treating it like a hazardous materials locker.
that analogy is absolutely perfect to visualize the cultural disconnect here. Because if someone brings a shiny new espresso machine into the break room and plugs it in, the stakes are super low.
Right, someone burns their tongue, you blow a fuse.
Exactly. The IT and facilities teams don't need a strict governance protocol for a coffee maker.
No.
But if an employee decides to bring a new, highly volatile, hazardous chemical into the building, you can't just stick it in the communal fridge.
Right, you need a detailed manifest.
You need a manifest, specialized training protocols, emergency spill procedures, and, most importantly, you need a named, legally liable individual who is responsible for its storage.
And AIs, specifically high-risk AI that makes decisions about human beings, is that hazardous material.
It is. But unlike a glowing barrel of chemicals, it's invisible. It just sneaks in through the back door.
And the reason standard IT asset management tools miss it is because of how it sneaks in, right?
Yeah.
Because standard ITAM tools are great at looking for discrete pieces of software. They scan a laptop and say, I see Microsoft Word here. I see Adobe Photoshop.
They look for executables,
Ah,
traditional licenses.
right. But AI is no longer a standalone piece of software you install from a disk or download as an app. It's embedded via APIs.
Which totally breaks the traditional procurement model.
Exactly. A traditional IT procurement process might flag $1 million enterprise software purchase. But what happens when an existing SaaS vendor like your global HR platform that you safely use for 5 years, what happens when they just push an overnight software update?
This is exactly how the accountability gap forms. The vendor pushes version 10.4 of their software, and buried in the release notes, there's a mention of a new AI-powered candidate prioritization dashboard.
And the IT department doesn't see this as a net new software purchase?
No, They already approved the vendor years ago. The budget is already allocated.
So suddenly the HR team comes into work on Monday, and they have this shiny new button that uses a neural network to rank job applicants.
Right. And nobody in the enterprise asked for a risk assessment.
Nobody defined human oversight.
Nobody documented what training data the vendor used to train that algorithm.
Right. And this creates a massive accountability gap where responsibility just completely vanishes into the ether.
It's terrifying. Right now, in most enterprises, no single executive can stand up and explain mechanically what every AI model is doing, who owns it internally, or, crucially, what the concrete fallback procedure is when that HR tool inevitably starts discriminating against a certain demographic.
So we have this casual break room coffee machine culture layered over a technology that demands rigorous hazardous materials protocols.
Yes.
And I mean, if this were purely just a matter of internal corporate messiness, if it was just inefficiency, we could probably take our time cleaning it up over the next decade.
Sure.
But the reason April 2026 is a crisis is that this internal lack of visibility is crashing into a massive ticking regulatory clock.
The EU AI Act.
Let's look at the actual timeline of the European Union's Artificial Intelligence Act. Because this piece of legislation is like a gravitational pull altering the orbit of every global company.
It really is.
Even if you're headquartered in Ohio or Tokyo, if your AI touches EU citizens or your software is sold into the EU market, you are squarely in the blast radius.
The scope of it is just unprecedented. And to understand why we are at the absolute end of the runway right now, we have to trace the timeline back to the starting gun.
Okay.
The act officially entered into force on August 1st, 2024. But the EU didn't enforce all the rules on day one. They designed this staggered, phased rollout.
They gave the market time to adjust.
Right. Which, unfortunately, a lot of companies interpret it as time to procrastinate.
Naturally. So let's walk through those past milestones so you, the listener, understand the momentum we're dealing with here. The EU structures this legislation using annexes, which basically means they categorize the rules based on the level of risk the AI poses.
Right, tiered risk.
It's not one blanket rule for all AI. So the first major milestone hit on February 2, 2025. This was the deadline for what the Act calls unacceptable risk AI, practices that were simply outlawed.
Yes, the absolute bans. As of February 2025, you could no longer use manipulative AI.
Meaning systems designed to subliminally distort human behavior.
Exactly. It also outlawed predictive policing algorithms that rely solely on profiling to predict criminal behavior. Completely banned social scoring systems, the kind that evaluate people based on social behavior, to deny them services.
But from a corporate perspective, the most impactful ban was on workplace and educational emotion recognition systems, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You can no longer deploy an AI tool to monitor a remote worker's webcam to infer if they are paying attention or feeling stressed based on their biometric data. That entire category of software became completely illegal to operate.
Wow. And crucially, that February 2025 milestone also introduced mandatory AI literacy requirements. Companies were legally obligated to begin training their staff.
Not just developers, by the way. Anyone interacting with these systems has to know what the AI actually does and its risks.
Okay, so then the timeline moved to August 2025. This was the deadline for general purpose AI, or GPAI.
Right. Think of the massive foundational models here. The large language models that can write code, generate text, act as a general reasoning engine.
So for GPAI, the obligations fell heavily on the providers, correct?
Yes, the company's actually training and building these massive models.
Yeah.
By August 2025, those providers had to start producing rigorous, standardized technical documentation.
Right.
They had to legally prove their training data complied with EU copyright laws, and they had to provide detailed public summaries of the content used to train their models.
And at the same time, the EU member states themselves had to establish their notifying authorities.
Yeah, they were locking in the localized rules for regulatory penalties. The whole infrastructure of enforcement was basically being built.
Which brings us to the looming, terrifying deadline that makes this month, April 2026, the point of no return.
August 2, 2026.
August 2, 2026. This is the massive milestone. This is when the rules for high-risk AI systems, defined under Annex 3 of the Act, become fully applicable.
And this is exactly where the abstract policy deck catches fire and just burns to the ground.
Because the definition of high-risk AI under Annex 3 is incredibly broad.
Unbelievably broad. It touches the core operational workflows of almost every large-scale enterprise on the planet.
Let's list these out explicitly, because there's a tendency for executives to think, well, we just make logistics software, we don't make Terminators, so we aren't high risk. What exactly falls under Annex 3rd?
Okay, it covers biometrics and biometric categorization. It covers the management and operation of critical infrastructure, so water, gas, electricity.
Makes sense.
It covers educational and vocational training, meaning any AI that determines who gets admitted to a program or how they're evaluated.
Okay.
But here's the big one for most companies. It heavily covers employment, workers' management, and access to self-employment.
So any algorithmic system touching hiring.
Hiring, firing, resume filtering, task allocation, promotion decisions, all of that is automatically high risk.
Wow.
It also covers access to essential private and public services, which is massive. That includes credit scoring for bank loans, risk assessments for life and health insurance, emergency services, dispatch routing, and finally, law enforcement, migration, and the administration of justice.
So basically, if you are a bank, a hospital, a university, an insurance provider, or just a large employer of any kind,
Yeah.
you are using high-risk AI.
It is an almost statistical certainty.
Right. But here's where I see the most confusion in the market, and we really need to clarify this mechanically. The Act defines different roles: providers, deployers, importers, distributors.
Right.
Let's say my company is a mid-sized logistics firm in Germany. We don't employ machine learning engineers. We don't train neural networks. We just buy an AI-powered resume scanner from some slick, venture-backed startup in Silicon Valley to help us hire truck drivers.
Okay.
The common assumption from the logistics firm's CEO is the startup built the AI. They're the tech company. They're the ones on the hook for compliance. We just bought a subscription.
And that assumption is the single most dangerous legal misconception in the business world today. We have to break down this liability transfer.
Okay, lay it out.
The Silicon Valley startup that built the tool is the provider. They do have stringent obligations under the Act, of course. They have to design a robust system, undergo conformity assessments, and affix a CE marking to prove their software is capable of being compliant. But your logistics firm, the company actually using the tool to make decisions about human beings, you are the deployer.
And the law treats the deployer very differently.
Completely differently. The law dictates that deployers are absolutely unequivocally responsible for how the system is actually used in the real world.
You can't just outsource it.
You cannot outsource your accountability through a vendor contract. The vendor provides the engine, but as the deployer, you are the one driving the car. And if that car runs someone over, the deployer is the one answering to the authorities.
Okay, let's talk about the mechanical reality of those deployer obligations. What does the logistics firm actually have to do?
As a deployer of high-risk AI, you are legally required to ensure human oversight, not just in theory, but in documented practice. You are required to actively monitor the system for algorithmic drift over time.
Okay.
You're required to ensure the data you feed into the system is relevant and representative. You must retain rigorous, immutable logs of the system's automated decisions.
Wow, immutable logs.
You have to train your staff on the limitations of the tool. And if the tool starts acting dangerously, you are legally obligated to suspend its use and report the incident to national authorities. The startup in California isn't going to do that for you.
So if August 2026 arrives and a regulator knocks on your door asking to see the logs for your HR filtering system and your general counsel's only defense is, well, the vendor's marketing website said their AI was ethical.
You are essentially defenseless.
Which transitions perfectly into the boardroom reality of this crisis. If a deployer is the one holding the bag for all these regulations, what exactly happens when the music stops in August 2026?
The fines.
What is the actual penalty for getting this wrong? Because boards need a financial justification to prioritize this inventory immediately.
The gap between casual deployment and legal accountability gets very expensive, very fast. And this financial pain manifests in three distinct ways: regulatory fines, deal friction, and internal drag.
Let's start with the obvious one, the fines. Anyone who was working in corporate compliance in 2018 remembers the rollout of GDPR.
Exactly. When GDPR was approaching, a lot of companies just didn't take it seriously. They thought it was an administrative nuisance.
Right. Update the privacy policy, add an accept cookies banner.
Yeah. And then the deadline passed, and the European data protection authorities started handing out fines in the tens and hundreds of millions of euros. They hit Amazon, they hit Google, they hit Meta. They proved they were willing to use the legislation as a weapon.
And the AI Act is structured with the exact same teeth.
Sharper teeth, honestly.
Mm.
GDPR was primarily about data at rest, how you store information. The AI Act is about data in motion, how information makes autonomous decisions.
So what are the numbers?
For prohibited AI practices, if you are caught using a banned system, the fines can reach up to 35 million euros or 7% of a company's total worldwide annual turnover, whichever is higher.
Let's just pause on that. 7% of global revenue.
It's massive.
For a multinational company operating on thin margins, a 7% top-line fine is literally a boardroom-level extinction event.
It wipes out entire fiscal years of profit. And for failing to comply with the high-risk AI obligations, the exact requirements employers are responsible for, like logging and human oversight, the fines can hit 15 million euros or 3% of global turnover.
Even for something minor.
Even something as seemingly minor as providing incorrect or misleading information to regulators during an inquiry carries a penalty of 7.5 million euros. The financial exposure is just catastrophic.
But relying purely on the fear of regulators is sometimes a tough sell. Some executives will just play the odds. They'll say, look, there are millions of companies in Europe. The regulators are understaffed. What are the chances they audit us in the first year?
Right, the will fly under the radar defense.
Exactly. But there is a second cost that hits immediately, and it doesn't wait for a regulator to wake up. Let's talk about deal friction or revenue risk, because this is where the free market will punish you before the government does.
Oh, absolutely. If you are operating in the B2B enterprise space, the landscape has permanently changed.
Lay out a scenario for us.
Okay, you're a B2B SaaS company selling a workflow automation suite. You're trying to close a massive 5-year contract with a major European bank, or even a U.S. bank with global operations. 2 years ago, during the procurement process, the bank's team would look at your pitch deck and ask, do you use AI in your product?
And your sales rep would beam and say, yes, we are fully AI-powered.
Exactly. And the bank would think you were so innovative and they'd sign the check.
Because AI was just a magical buzzword that meant better.
Right. But today, in 2026, that exact same conversation goes very differently. If your sales rep says, yes, it's AI-powered, the bank's procurement, legal, and third-party risk teams are going to instantly halt the deal.
Halting it completely.
Yeah. They're going to hand you a massive due diligence questionnaire and say, great, since you are bringing AI into our ecosystem, provide us with your AI system registry. Provide the algorithmic risk assessments, show us your auditable human oversight protocols, and produce the evidence trails proving you continuously monitored this specific model for data drift.
And if the B2B vendor responds by just handing the bank a beautifully designed 2-page AI ethics principles PDF.
The deal dies in due diligence. Full stop.
Wow.
The enterprise buyer simply walks away. Because remember the deployer liability we just discussed.
Right.
If the bank buys your undocumented AI tool and integrates it into their processes, the bank becomes the deployer.
Ah. So the bank absorbs the risk of the 15 million euro fine.
Exactly. And enterprise B2B buyers will absolutely not absorb your legal risk. If you cannot mathematically and legally prove how your AI is governed, you simply cannot sell your software to regulated enterprise clients. You are locked out of the Fortune 500 market.
Which brings us to the third cost of denial. Internal drag.
Yeah.
Let's say a company realizes they're losing deals, they realize the deadline is here, and they decide they need to fix the problem at the last minute. They order their engineering teams to go back and make all their existing AI systems compliant.
It's a nightmare.
Trying to retrofit rigorous governance, logging, and explainability onto a live, heavily deployed AI model is a brutal undertaking. It's like trying to install seat belts and airbags into a car while it's already doing 80 miles an hour down the highway.
It's technically possible, but it's not the design anyone wanted, and it is excruciatingly painful. When you force a company to do compliance retrofitting, you are initiating an archaeological dig.
Right.
Your legal, risk, and core engineering teams have to stop building new products. Instead, they are digging through years of legacy code, searching through old Slack messages, tracking down former employees.
Just to figure out what it is.
Just to reverse engineer what a specific algorithm is doing and what data it was originally trained on. It burns thousands of incredibly expensive engineering hours. It paralyzes your product roadmap because your best developers are doing forensic compliance work instead of actually innovating.
Okay, I want to play the role of an aggressive chief risk officer in a hostile boardroom right now.
Okay, go for it.
I hear all of this. I understand the fines, the lost deals, the engineering drag. But if I walk into the boardroom tomorrow and tell the CEO, We need to hit pause on our AI innovation pipeline so we can do an exhaustive inventory, dig through our sauce stack, and fill out massive spreadsheets to appease the EU. The CEO is going to bite my head off.
Oh, without a doubt.
They're going to say, we are in an AI arms race. Our competitors are launching new features every week. I care about growth, market share, and revenue. You are acting like the Department of No. You are slowing us down. How does a compliance leader actually win that fight in the real world?
You win that fight by completely changing the vocabulary. You absolutely never pitch this as a compliance exercise.
Because compliance sounds like a tax.
Exactly. You pitch this as a revenue protection program. You look the CEO directly in the eye and say, this isn't about slowing down innovation. This is about ensuring our innovation is legally permitted to exist in the market.
Oh, that's good.
You say, without an operational AI system of record, we literally cannot pass procurement at the biggest banks, hospitals, and logistics firms in the world. Next quarter, our competitors who have this documentation are going to steal our biggest enterprise deals right out from under us.
So you frame unregulated AI as a toxic asset.
Exactly. You tell the board, we are currently sitting on a pile of undocumented toxic technological assets that make us uninvestable and unsellable. We are doing this census to secure the supply chain of our digital product.
That makes total sense.
When you frame it around deal velocity and revenue protection, the board listens.
I think that framing is the key to unlocking the budget and the mandate, which brings us to the absolute core of our mission today, the tactical playbook.
Yes, the 48-hour census.
Right, because the traditional corporate method of handling a new regulation is to set up a cross-functional governance committee that meets once a month for 6 months to slowly draft a policy document.
And we do not have 6 months.
We have an impending hard deadline. We need immediate, visceral visibility into the dark corners of the enterprise network.
Exactly. If an organization wants to survive August 2026, the absolute worst thing they can do right now is start by writing a new policy deck.
Why?
Because a beautiful, comprehensive AI policy attached to an incomplete, fictional inventory of your technology is just a very tidy, professional way of being completely unprepared.
You need the raw data.
You must start with raw data. You need an urgent, mandatory AI system census executed across the entire organization.
Let's break the mechanics of the census down, step by step, because I'm wondering, how exactly does an enterprise execute a 48-hour fire drill across thousands of employees without causing mass panic or just getting stonewalled?
Okay, step one. The mandate must come from the absolute top. This cannot be a polite email from a mid-level compliance manager or an IT intern.
If it is, it'll just be ignored.
Totally ignored. The directive must come directly from the CEO, the board of directors, or the chief risk officer. It must be sent to every single business unit leader, every department head, every regional manager, and every IT function.
And what's the message?
The messaging is blunt and non-negotiable. It says, we are establishing our mandatory AI system of record. You have exactly 48 hours to submit a one-page entry for every single AI system, model, or embedded feature your team is currently using, testing, or building.
And the crucial part here, which loops back to our coffee machine and hazardous materials analogy, is defining what actually counts as an AI system.
Yes.
Because if you just say AI, the marketing team will think you only mean the data science team's proprietary neural network.
Exactly. The mandate must explicitly define the scope. It must state that this census includes, number one, internal models developed by your own engineers. Number two, external vendor systems you've purchased, like a specialized AI hiring tool. And number three, embedded SaaS features.
The sneaky ones.
The subtle AI capabilities pushed into the software you already use for payroll, marketing, or customer service. And it must also explicitly state that this includes pilots, proofs of concept, and shadow IT.
So if you're testing it or if you bought it on a credit card, it goes on the list?
It goes on the list.
Let's talk about the structure of the data collection, because if you just ask a department head for an essay about their AI use, you'll get a useless, vague paragraph.
You'll get corporate word salad.
Right. The census has to yield structured, comparable data. What exactly goes on this one-pager?
The fields must be tight, mandatory, and unambiguous.
Right.
There are 7 key fields.
Okay.
First field is the system name and vendor. What is it called and who makes it? Second is the executive owner,
Which is critical.
who is the named human being with a title and a budget, who is legally accountable for this tool existing in our environment. Third is business purpose. What is the actual operational objective?
Are we using it to save time, increase conversion rates, filter data?
Exactly. Fourth is geography.
Yeah.
Where is this system deployed? And whose data is it processing? Is it touching EU citizens?
Super important.
Fifth is inputs and data sources. What information is feeding this model? Is it public data or proprietary database, sensitive customer PII? Sixth is deployment status. Is this just a sandbox pilot, or is it fully live in production making decisions right now?
And the seventh field.
The seventh field is the most important for regulatory triage. What downstream decisions does this AI affect? Does it touch hiring? Does it touch credit limits? Does it route patient care?
Okay, I have to ask the obvious logistical question here. Why 48 hours? That sounds unnecessarily aggressive. In a massive Fortune 500 company, tracking down all this information takes time. Why not give the department heads a month to do a really thorough, careful audit?
Because the psychology of corporate behavior dictates that if you give an enterprise a month to do an audit, they will turn it into a bureaucratic defense mechanism.
What do you mean?
If you give them 30 days, they will form subcommittees. They'll schedule pre-meetings to discuss the template design. They will hire consultants to define what AI means.
Oh, totally.
But most dangerously, they will use that month to try and clean up or hide their shadow AI before they report it to the chief risk officer.
The department heads will realize they are running unsanctioned, risky tools, and they'll quietly pull the plug. Or sweep the messy pilots under the rug so they don't look incompetent to leadership.
Exactly. They will sanitize the narrative. A 48-hour window forces a rapid, honest, visceral baseline. It relies entirely on organizational muscle memory.
It forces a department head to look at their current budget and ask, what am I paying for right now?
Yes. What are my teams using today to hit their quotas? It pulls the shadow AI out into the light before anyone has the time to hide the bodies. You need the raw, ugly, unvarnished data immediately to see the true size of your exposure.
It is a triage event.
You need to know exactly how many bleeding patients are in the emergency room before you start writing a long-term hospital administration policy.
I want to visualize this. Let's walk through a hypothetical like hour 36 of this 48-hour census.
Yeah.
Imagine a mid-level marketing director. They get the email from the CEO. At first, they think, we don't build AI, we just run campaigns. But at hour 36, they look at their tech stack, and they realize the boutique lead generation platform they bought 6 months ago uses an algorithmic scoring system.
To rank which customer leads the sales team should call first.
Right. And they realize that algorithm is processing the ages, locations, and browsing behaviors of European consumers. Suddenly, that marketing director is sweating because they have an undocumented system making decisions based on PII.
And they have to put their name on the census line as the executive owner.
Right.
That is exactly the realization the census is designed to trigger. That localized panic is the first step toward actual governance. You are forcing the business units to take ownership of their technological choices.
So the 48 hours expire. The C-suite is sitting in a conference room on Friday afternoon, and they're staring at the aggregated results. They probably expected a list of maybe 15 highly visible AI systems.
But instead, they're looking at a terrifying spreadsheet with 140 rows.
A massive, chaotic list of unmanaged, undocumented, wildly diverse AI tools scattered across the globe.
Exactly.
What is the very next step? How do you take that raw, terrifying list and begin forging it into a compliant, defensible system of record?
This moves us into the blueprinting phase. You have the raw material, now you have to refine it. This phase requires 3 distinct immediate actions: flagging, classifying, and blueprinting.
Let's start with flagging.
You take that spreadsheet of 140 systems and you instantly run a filter based on the EU AI Act Annex 3 criteria we discussed earlier.
You look at field number 7, the downstream decisions.
Yes. Any system touching employment, credit, health, public services, critical infrastructure, or safety gets highlighted in bright red. These are your high-risk candidates.
The ones that carry the 15 million euro fine potential?
Exactly. These require immediate triage.
And what happens if you look at one of those bright red row, let's say it's a customer sentiment analysis tool routing support tickets, and the executive owner field is blank? What if the customer service team says, well, Sarah bought it, but Sarah left the company 6 months ago, so the software just runs automatically in the background?
That brings us to step 2, assigning ownership. You cannot have orphaned high-risk AI running in a corporate environment. If a high-risk system lacks an owner, the executive team must assign one immediately.
Right.
There is a great legal maxim for this. You must assign ownership before the spreadsheet turns into a courtroom exhibit.
Oh, wow. That's chilling.
But it's true. In the event of a failure, regulators and plaintiffs will demand to know who was responsible. Someone with a director-level title or higher and an associated budget must be legally and operationally accountable for that tool's compliance from that second forward.
Okay, we have the raw list, we flagged the high-risk systems, and we ensured every system has a named owner who is losing sleep over it. Now comes the heavy lifting, control blueprinting. What does that mean from an engineering and operational standpoint?
Blueprinting means defining the standard, non-negotiable controls required for each risk class. For those high-risk systems, the EU AI Act doesn't want good intentions or ethical promises. It wants hard, mathematical, and procedural controls.
So what does that look like?
It means you must mandate data quality checks to ensure the training data isn't fundamentally biased. You need comprehensive model documentation that clearly defines the system's operational limitations.
Okay.
You need strict, immutable logging standards, so every single decision the AI makes leaves a digital paper trail. You need continuous monitoring requirements, and crucially, you need defined, auditable fallback procedures.
I want to spend significant time unpacking two of those concepts because they sound simple on paper but are mechanically really complex. Continuous monitoring for drift and auditable human oversight. Let's start with drift. We use this term a lot. The algorithm is drifting. But how does that actually happen mechanically? Why does a system that works perfectly on Monday start failing on Friday?
Algorithmic drift is essentially the degradation of a model's predictive power, because the world it operates in has changed. Models are trained on historical data. They assume the future will look like the past.
Right.
There are generally two types of drift you have to monitor for. The first is data drift. This is when the format or distribution of the input data changes.
Can you give an example?
Sure. For example, if your AI was trained to read medical scans from a specific brand of high-resolution MRI machine, and suddenly the hospital starts feeding it lower-resolution scans from a cheaper machine, the data has drifted.
And the AI will start making incorrect diagnoses because the input no longer matches its training parameters.
Exactly.
And the second type is concept drift.
Right. Concept drift is when the underlying reality of the world fundamentally shifts.
Yeah.
The classic example is the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, sure.
In early 2020, almost every automated supply chain algorithm and consumer demand forecasting model completely broke.
Because human behavior totally changed overnight.
Yes. They broke because they were trained on a world where people bought a normal amount of toilet paper and worked in offices. Overnight, the concept of normal consumer behavior changed. The models didn't break technically. The world broke their assumptions.
So continuous monitoring means engineering a mathematical tripwire. You have to constantly compare the model's current output against a baseline, and if the deviation exceeds a certain statistical threshold, an alarm goes off.
Exactly.
Which leads us to the second complex control, auditable human oversight. A lot of companies think they are compliant because they say, oh, don't worry, the AI doesn't make the final decision. A human looks at the AI's output and clicks approve.
A human looks at it is not a control. That is an anecdote, and regulators are explicitly targeting that exact defense.
Why is that a problem?
The danger here is a psychological phenomenon called automation bias. If an AI system is right 99% of the time, the human reviewer eventually stops actually reviewing the data. They get fatigued.
So they just start rubber stamping the AI's recommendation because the computer is usually right.
Exactly. The human just becomes a biological pass-through mechanism for the algorithm.
So how do you engineer auditable human oversight that actually satisfies the regulation?
You need a logged, immutable evidence trail proving that the human oversight was active and meaningful. The system must force the human to review the inputs. The human must have the technical capability, the explicit authority, and the time to override the system.
How do you prove they aren't just clicking approve blindly?
You might even inject intentional test cases, like anomalous recommendations generated by the compliance team that get slipped into the human reviewer's queue to ensure they're actually paying attention and will reject a bad AI decision.
Wow, like secret shopper testing for your own compliance.
Yes. The oversight has to be structural, provable, and resistant to fatigue.
And that brings up the concept of the fallback procedure. If our company has an AI-driven customer service routing system and the server crashes, the fallback is simple. The phone lines automatically switch over to a human operator queue. It's a binary switch.
Right, that's easy.
But let's look at a much darker scenario. What if our AI is a loan approval system? It doesn't crash, it stays perfectly online, but over a 6-month period, due to concept drift in the economic data, the algorithm starts subtly discriminating against female applicants from a specific zip code.
Yeah, the quiet failures.
Exactly. It's not a catastrophic outage, it's a quiet mathematical bias. How do you create a fallback procedure for an invisible failure?
That is the exact nightmare scenario the regulators are trying to prevent, and it's why deploying high-risk AI is so difficult. This requires redefining what failure means. Failure isn't just a 404 error or a server outage. Failure is a degradation of fairness, safety, or accuracy.
Okay, so how do you build a fallback for that?
To create a fallback for this, you have to engage in active red teaming. You cannot wait for an external auditor, a journalist, or a class action lawsuit to find the bias in your loan system. You have to deploy an internal team of engineers whose sole job is to intentionally try and break your own system to find its flaws before they manifest in reality.
You test against the failure modes proactively.
Yes, you run synthetic data through the loan system to test for demographic disparities. Your fallback procedure in this scenario might be an automated circuit breaker.
How does that work?
If the approval disparity between male and female applicants exceeds a predefined statistical tolerance, say 2%, the system automatically pauses all algorithmic approvals and routes everything to a mandatory secondary review panel using a completely different non-AI heuristic model.
You have to prove on paper what the architectural safety net looks like when the math goes wrong. You have to build the brakes before you make the car go faster.
Absolutely.
So, executing the census, classifying the risk, establishing the monitoring tripwires, and engineering these fallback procedures. Doing this just once for the 140 systems you discovered in the 48-hour fire drill is a monumental, exhausting task. It will take months of intense work.
It's a huge undertaking.
But here is the real organizational challenge. Once you clean up the mess, how do you prevent the enterprise from just buying 20 more undocumented AI tools the very next month?
That is the million-dollar question.
How do you stop the shadow AI from creeping right back into the network the second the chief risk officer looks away? Because if governance is just a once-a-year audit, it's doomed to fail.
Exactly. A census is a point-in-time snapshot. It cures the immediate infection, but it doesn't build an immune system, which perfectly sets up the final piece of our operational playbook, wiring governance directly into the company's DNA.
Specifically, integrating these AI controls into the deeply entrenched procurement and vendor management workflows that already dictate how the business operates.
Right. Governance only works when it is invisibly attached to decisions that people already have to make in their daily jobs. If you make compliance a separate chore, people will skip it.
Because they're busy.
They're busy. They have targets to hit. This is the absolute secret to making it stick. The most advanced companies are realizing that they need to stop inventing parallel universes.
Don't create a separate AI risk committee that sits in an ivory tower.
Exactly. A committee that sends out newsletters and asks people nicely to comply with their separate forms. That doesn't work. You have to map AI controls directly into the company's existing risk architecture.
So how does that practically look?
Every large enterprise already has entrenched processes for buying things and building things. You have privacy reviews, information security questionnaires, vendor onboarding portals. You must embed the AI checkpoints directly into those existing unavoidable funnels.
Walk me through what that looks like on the ground. Let's say I'm that marketing director again, and I want to buy a new sauce tool for video editing. I log into the procurement portal.
When you log into the procurement portal to request the purchase, the standard vendor onboarding form must now have a mandatory gatekeeping section. It asks, does this software or any of its sub-processors utilize artificial intelligence, machine learning, or large language models?
And if I check yes.
The form dynamically expands and asks for the vendor's model, documentation, the data privacy protocols, and the intended use case. The system automatically runs a preliminary risk classification.
Wow, right there in the portal.
Yes. If the tool touches high-risk categories like employment or biometric data, the purchase order is fundamentally frozen. Procurement cannot issue the PO, and IT cannot provision access until the central AI governance team reviews it, approves the fallback procedure, and officially logs it into the system of record.
So procurement becomes the ultimate gatekeeper.
Procurement, legal, and InfoSec act as the border patrol. Nothing gets built internally without passing an AI design review. Nothing gets bought externally without passing a vendor AI checkpoint.
And going back to our earlier point about the silent software updates, when an existing approved SaaS vendor pushes a new version that introduces an AI feature,
Right.
Your vendor management team must have a contractual mechanism in place to catch it. The contracts must be updated to legally require vendors to proactively notify you of new algorithmic features so they can be classified and added to the registry before they go live in your environment.
Yes, the contracts themselves have to evolve. And to manage all of this flowing information, companies are setting up what is broadly called a central governance forum.
This is the group of people actually reviewing these frozen purchase orders and assessing the risk.
Exactly. This forum usually includes representatives from legal, risk, cybersecurity, data science, and the business units. But there is a crucial operational detail here regarding authority. If this group is just advisory, it will fail.
The structural authority of this forum is everything, isn't it?
It's everything. If nobody in that room has explicit veto power over a project, then the meeting is just decorative. It is purely compliance theater.
That is a harsh reality. If nobody has veto power, the meeting is decorative.
It is profound, and it is the breaking point for a lot of corporate cultures. Let's say the product team has been working for a year on a highly anticipated, highly profitable new AI-driven product launch. The CEO is excited. Wall Street is expecting it.
Everyone's ready to go.
The product is presented to the Central Governance Forum 1 week before launch. And the forum realizes that the engineering team completely failed to implement the required audit logs and drift monitoring for the core algorithm.
Yikes.
The chief risk officer, or the head of AI governance, must have the unassailable authority to look at that massive profitable launch and say, no, we are not legally compliant. I am overriding the product lead, and I am stopping this launch until the architecture is fixed.
And if they can't do that?
If they cannot do that without getting fired, your governance is an illusion.
So essentially, we are establishing a digital border control, and we are arming the border guards. Nothing gets bought, nothing gets quietly updated by a vendor, and absolutely nothing gets shipped to customers without declaring if it's bringing AI in its suitcase and proving that it's safe.
And to ensure that Border Patrol remains vigilant, leadership must track practical, operational KPIs. You don't measure the maturity of your AI governance by how many pages your policy document has or how many ethical principles you've published.
Yep.
You measure it by hard metrics. What percentage of our known AI systems are formally logged in the registry? What percentage have been definitively classified by risk tier? What percentage of our high-risk systems have a fully documented, tested fallback procedure?
And how many triggered an internal audit finding this quarter?
Exactly. The point of tracking these metrics isn't to present a flawless dashboard to the board. The point is to actively hunt for failures and catch the gaps before the regulators do.
It is a massive structural shift in corporate operations. We are talking about dragging the conversation away from abstract, philosophical debates about the future of AI and forcing it into the gritty, boring operational reality of database management, procurement workflows, and legal liability.
It is the definitive end of the honeymoon phase for enterprise AI. The era of blind experimentation is over. The next era is the compliance crunch.
Let's pull all of this together and summarize the massive journey we've just been on in this deep dive. We started by confronting the accountability gap, the dangerous, pervasive illusion that having a flashy AI strategy deck is the same thing as having rigorous AI governance.
Right.
We unpacked how AI evades traditional IT tracking, sneaking in through embedded SaaS updates like an invisible hazardous material. We looked at the ticking, unforgiving clock of the EU AI Act, realizing that the August 2026 deadline for high-risk deployer obligations is not a future theoretical problem, it is a present-day crisis.
That's right here.
We explored the devastating financial and operational costs of ignoring this reality, the massive top-line regulatory signs, the lost B2B enterprise deals due to procurement friction, and the painful internal archaeology of retrofitting controls onto live systems.
And then we laid out the mechanical playbook to survive it.
Yes, the sheer operational brilliance of using an aggressive 48-hour AI system senses to force the shadow AI out into the light before the business units can hide it. We walked through how to process that raw data, flagging the high-risk tools, assigning executive ownership, and engineering the complex realities of drift monitoring and auditable human oversight.
And finally, we discussed how to sustain that compliance by wiring the AI checks directly into the procurement and vendor management DNA of the company, ensuring the Central Governance Forum has the absolute veto power required to protect the enterprise.
It is a phenomenal amount of work to process, but it is deeply actionable. It is a roadmap out of the muddy waters. So as we close this deep dive, what is the final overarching thought we want to leave the listener with today? What is the conceptual takeaway that transcends just checking boxes on our regulatory list?
I want you to think critically about the narrative we've been fed by the tech industry over the last few years. Every Silicon Valley CEO, every keynote speaker, and every tech evangelist claims that artificial intelligence is the most revolutionary, powerful, and paradigm-shifting technology of our generation.
They compare it to the invention of electricity or the internet.
Right. But if it is truly that powerful, if it is truly reshaping how human beings are hired, treated, and evaluated, why have we been governing it with the casual looseness of an experimental beta feature?
Wow, that's a great point.
Perhaps the ultimate test of a company's readiness for the AI era isn't the sophistication of the neural networks they deploy. It isn't their ability to write clever prompts or integrate the latest API. It is the boring, rigorous, unflinching discipline of their filing cabinets.
The filing cabinets.
Yes, the next era of business won't be won by those who just move the fastest and break things. It will be won by those who can legally and mathematically prove exactly how their things work. Because an algorithm you can't explain, an algorithm you can't control, and an algorithm you can't document is no longer an asset. It is just a catastrophic liability waiting to happen.
A catastrophic liability waiting to happen. Which brings us right back to that jagged white line on the hospital x-ray. You cannot fix the broken bone until you build the machine capable of clearly seeing the fracture. So tomorrow morning, when you open your laptop, log into your corporate network, and look at your daily workflows, I want you to ask yourself a very uncomfortable question.
It's one question.
What AI is running in the background right now making decisions about my business that I have completely forgotten about? Because the AI you forgot to log might just be the exact one that brings the whole system down.